There are a lot of falsehoods perpetuated by the feminist narrative when it comes to family violence, and most of them stem from the notion that the majority of family violence is perpetrated by men and is done as part of some kind of patriarchal system of control over women. In this video, I'm going to present some facts which will prove that wrong. Welcome to Facts to Piss Off a Feminist: Family Violence. Trigger warning. Those who watch this video may be exposed to reality. Half of all intimate partner violence cases are reciprocal, and women are the aggressors in the majority of non-reciprocal cases. According to differences in frequency of violence or reported injury between relationships with reciprocal and non-reciprocal intimate partner violence, a study conducted by Daniel J. Whitaker et al. And published in the American Journal of Public Health by the CDC in May 2007, 24% of all relationships experience some violence, and half of all that violence is reciprocal, meaning both partners abuse each other. But among the non-reciprocated violence, women are the aggressors 70.7% of the time. Another study by Murray A. Strauss titled Prevalence of Violence Against Dating Partners by Male and Female University Students Worldwide, published in Violence Against Women, Volume 10 by the University of New Hampshire in 2004, conducted surveys of 31 universities in 16 countries and found that 25% of male students and 28% of female students had physically assaulted a dating partner within the 12 months prior to the study. Another study titled Sex Differences in Aggression Between Heterosexual Partners, a meta-analytic review, a review of 82 studies from 1972 to 1999, written by John Archer of the University of Central Lancashire, and published in the Psychological Bulletin in 2000, found that even though men who perpetrate domestic violence are more likely to inflict injury, and women make up 62% of those who seek medical treatment for such injuries, women perpetrate physical violence against their intimate partners more often. On the 14th page, Archer writes, when measures were based on specific acts, women were significantly more likely than men to have used physical aggression towards their partners and to have used it more frequently. It has often been claimed that the reason CTS studies have found as many women as men to be physically aggressive is because women are defending themselves against attack. A number of studies have addressed this issue and found that when asked, more women than men report initiating an attack, or that the proportions are equal between the two sexes. Two large-scale studies found that a substantial portion of both women and men reported using physical aggression when the partner did not. This evidence does not support the view that the CTS is only measuring women's self-defense. This study also noted that most cases of intimate partner violence are reciprocal. According to Female Perpetration of Violence in Heterosexual Intimate Relationships, Adolescence Through Adulthood, a longitudinal study of 62 empirical studies from 1996 to 2006, published by Johns Hopkins University in 2008, between 30% and 68% of heterosexual women aged 21 and over have perpetrated physical violence against an intimate partner, and 15.9% to 25.8% have engaged in moderate violence, and 7.1% to 26.9% have engaged in severe violence within just 12 months prior to the study. This study used the CTS-2 definition of physical intimate partner violence as defined by Murray A. Strauss et al. In 1996, although it is careful to clarify that some of the 62 studies they looked at did not go by this definition. The study also points out that 80% of heterosexual women aged 21 and over have engaged in some form of psychological aggression against an intimate partner, again going by the CTS-2 definition. This study also noted that a substantial number of women seeking services for victimization may also be perpetrators of IPV. The perception that intimate partner violence is typically man-on-woman stems from the fact that men are less likely to report being abused by their wives or girlfriends or to seek help for it, probably because they'll more than likely be turned down by abuse shelters, get told they did something to deserve it, and maybe even get laughed at, and of course, feminists don't do anything to help. Men are almost as likely to be the victims of domestic abuse at the hands of an intimate partner as women. According to Intimate Partner Violence in the United States 2010, a report by the CDC, 32.9% of women and 28.1% of men have experienced some form of non-sexual violence at the hands of an intimate partner at some point in their lives, although women are a little more than twice as likely to experience severe forms of violence. When it comes to psychological aggression, men and women are about equally likely to be victims, with slightly more men than women having experienced some form of coercive control. The CDC isn't the only organization to report similarities between the genders of domestic violence cases, nor is this a recent revelation. In 1997, Martin S. Freiberg of California State University began compiling a list of research documents reporting gender symmetry in domestic violence. As of 2012, there are now 286 articles listed, 221 of which are empirical studies and 65 of which are reviews of such studies, and with an aggregate sample size of 371,600 between them. One such study is The Battered Husband Syndrome by Susan K. Steinmetz of the University of Delaware, published in Victimology, an international journal in 1977, making it among the earliest studies ever conducted on the subject of domestic violence towards men. According to Steinmetz, the data suggests that not only the percentage of wives having used physical violence often exceeds that of the husbands, but that the wives also exceed husbands in the frequency with which these acts occur. Lesbian couples experience more domestic violence than any other demographic, with the exception of bisexual women. 43.8% of American lesbians have experienced rape, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner. This is according to page 2 of the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, 2010 findings on victimization by sexual orientation, published by the CDC in 2013. It's also worth noting that, according to the same report, gay men are the least likely to experience violence from an intimate partner at only 26%. Men are more likely to be the victims of reproductive coercion at the hands of women than the reverse. According to the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey 2010 summary report published by the CDC, 10.4% of men in the United States reported having an intimate partner who tried to make them impregnate them or prevent them from using birth control. Only 8.6% of women reported experiencing reproductive coercion at the hands of men. Women, especially mothers, are responsible for the majority of child maltreatment and child fatalities due to maltreatment. Child Family Community Australia provides a convenient summary of the findings of 53 studies regarding the various forms of child abuse and the people who perpetrate it. Even though this is an Australian organization, most of the studies they look at were conducted with American, British, and Canadian populations due to the limited data concerning Australian populations. According to the CFCA's data based on these studies, the majority of child fatalities due to violence and physical abuse are perpetrated by men. For abuse victims under the age of 15, 55.6% experience non-sexual physical abuse from their father or stepfather, and 25.9% experience abuse from their mother or stepmother. However, among abuse victims between the ages of 18 and 24, women were the primary aggressors, with 49% of victims having been abused by their mother versus 40% by their father. In general, the more severe forms of non-sexual physical abuse were perpetrated by fathers and father surrogates. Men were also the perpetrators in the overwhelming majority of sexual abuse cases, making up as much as 90% of all sexual abuse perpetrators, and 26% of all abuse involving a male perpetrator involves sexual abuse. It should be pointed out that fathers and stepfathers were the perpetrators in only 13.5% of sexual abuse cases, with the majority being perpetrated by other relatives or family friends. With the exception of sexual abuse, all forms of child maltreatment are most commonly perpetrated by the victim's own parents or caregivers. When it comes to child emotional abuse, women make up half of the aggressors. However, the most common type of child maltreatment is neglect, making up 75% of child maltreatment cases according to Child Maltreatment 2014, published by the Department of Health and Human Services. Women are the perpetrators in the majority of neglect cases, which isn't surprising considering primary caregivers of children are most commonly women, but 2/3 of all child maltreatment cases involving a woman took the form of neglect, according to the CFCA, and the majority of child fatalities due to neglect happen while the victims are under the care of women. When neglect is counted as a form of maltreatment, mothers are the perpetrators in 40.7% of child maltreatment cases versus only 20.5% for fathers and 21.3% for both parents. When it comes to child fatalities due to maltreatment, 28% involve the mother as the sole perpetrator if cases of neglect are included, and only 15% of child fatalities involve the father acting alone, and only 21.8% involve both parents. This is according to Child Maltreatment 2014. It's worth noting that 35.6% of child maltreatment-related fatalities are due solely to neglect, and another 25.2% are due to a combination of neglect and some other type of maltreatment, according to the American Humane Association. It should be pointed out that, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, only 27% of children under 18 years of age are being raised by single parents, with 87% of those being raised by their mothers as of 2011, meaning only about 23.5% of children are being raised by single mothers. Boys and girls are about equally likely to be victims of child maltreatment, but boys are more likely to die from it. According to Child Maltreatment 2014, boys made up 48.9% of child maltreatment victims, and girls made up 50.7%. However, boys accounted for 58.3% of maltreatment-related fatalities. Furthermore, although girls become the majority of maltreatment victims at ages 6 and up, boys below the age of 6 are slightly more likely to be victims than girls in the same age group. Children below the age of 3 make up 70.7% of child maltreatment-related fatalities. So those are some facts to piss off a feminist. If you know of any more facts pertaining to family violence that would make feminists feel triggered for having the worldview shaken up, put them in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video, check out my other videos, and subscribe.